You feel good?
And remarkably, the answer might actually be yes.
That's the goal. You might want to live long, but even more important, you want to live well.
What does it mean to be a man? We ask ourselves, or I can see for a lot of you in the audience, it might not be a question you ask yourselves, but maybe it's a question you ask of your partners, or your sons, or your colleagues. Well, it's actually quite a complex question, a question I've given a lot of thought to over the years. And I'm going to try and answer that today, but I thought I'd start by taking an easier approach and defining what it isn't, which is slightly easier. Because what it isn't is being a dickhead, particularly a violent dickhead. That's pretty much it, actually. Thank you. No, I probably should talk for a few more minutes. But that's actually a very simple starting place. If us men could at least start off with that, we'd be doing a much better job. If we could teach our sons and our brothers and our colleagues to do that, we'd be doing a much better job. But I think I probably need to explain a bit more about what it does mean to be a man. I am a man. You can probably tell from the beard, but I thought I'd make sure there was no misunderstandings there. But my story of being a man goes back way before I had a beard. And most of my story starts when I was a young, hopeful cricket player, many, many years ago, dreaming of playing cricket for Australia like a lot of young men, a lot of young women today. The problem was I wasn't very good. Well, I wasn't as good as I wanted to be or as good as I needed to be. And so often I'd go out and not score as many runs as I wanted to, as many runs as I thought the team needed to win. And I'd be upset by that. I wasn't a bad sport. I wasn't upset with the umpire's decision. I was upset with myself, and I was upset because my dreams had been dashed. My dreams of playing cricket for Australia, my dreams of representing my country, wearing whites, playing at Lords. Why wouldn't you be upset if your dreams had been dashed? If you'd missed out or thought you wouldn't miss out on your aspirations, on your goals? But you see, being upset wasn't really allowed. And I learnt this very quickly. I learnt that my teammates would give me strange looks when I walked off with moisture in my eyes. I learnt that my father, as well-meaning and caring as he was, would slowly guide me away from the rest of the players over to a corner and gently, kindly, compassionately say, "It's not that bad, don't be upset." And this is the message we send our children, but especially our sons. Don't be upset. Don't cry. That's not a normal thing to do. But why isn't it normal to be upset when something that you'd really love to achieve has just been taken from you or missed out on? So I learnt that lesson very early on, and I want to emphasize again, my father, for his generation and at that time, was a very emotionally intelligent man. I probably didn't realize it at the time, but in hindsight, he certainly wasn't a bad father in that regard. But that was the first lesson I learned from him, and I learned it from society generally. We do that still today, very subtly, but in many, many ways. And later on I learned, as I hit adolescence and early adulthood, to suppress those feelings. Oops, let's just go on back. I thought there was something wrong with me. I still think that many times today, but at the time, I thought I was soft. Men don't cry. Men don't get upset. Particularly something as seemingly innocuous as getting out in a cricket game. It's just a game. But it wasn't just a game, and most things have more meaning than they might otherwise appear. I've subsequently learned that other men get upset about all sorts of things, including women having opinions. So who's soft? I'm not sure. Who's the snowflake there? But what I learned again is that men need to suppress their feelings. Men can't be sensitive. It's not right. And as I grew older, I learned that there were ways to do that, effective ways. Alcohol. We might not realize it again, but this is something we teach our kids, we spread through our society, is rife with problem drinking. Now that doesn't mean we're all alcoholics, but how many of you have walked home at the end of the day, walked in the door, the kids might be there and say, "Oh, geez, I like a glass of wine. Oh, geez, I really need a beer." What are we saying? Again, what message are we sending? Alcohol is a way of coping with stress. Alcohol is a way of pushing those emotions down. And you know what? It works in the short term. It doesn't work in the long time, as I learned as a young man, and many of us learn as young adults, that those short-term benefits are massively overridden by some serious, in some cases, long-term problems. But there still is a massive problem in our society, and it's not just alcohol. We use all sorts of substances, all sorts of drugs, all sorts of distractions, so we don't have to deal with our negative emotions. And particularly, dare I say it, men. Dealing with negative emotions is something that men are not trained to do. We're still not very good at doing. We're getting better, I think, but it's still a problem. Now, there are those, many of those, who just say this is a normal thing. You need to let boys be boys. It's normal that boys fight. It's normal that boys will have a drink and muck around. It's normal that boys will hold their emotions in. That's what we need our boys to do. That's what we need our boys to do if they're going to become strong men. Well, bullshit. It's a technical term, by the way, for those of you that haven't studied masculinity in psychology. But seriously, I call bullshit. That's just simply not true. Boys are not like that, not naturally. You only need to look around young boys in the playground, young boys at home. You need to look around at different cultures to see the differences about how young boys act, young men act. It's simply not true. Even if it were true, back in the paleo cavemen days, you know what? We've evolved. Some of us have anyway. We don't walk around with animal skins and clubs. Most of us don't eat paleo diets. It's not necessarily the healthiest thing to do in the modern era. And regardless, these attitudes are causing serious damage to our young men. Very, very serious damage. Today alone, these 24 hours and the time since you woke up this morning, the time you go to bed tonight, 6 or 7 men will take their own lives. It's 3 times as many women. More men will have problem drinking. More men will have mental health difficulties. More men will harm themselves in a variety of different ways. Our boys and our men are literally killing themselves. Now, there are a variety of reasons for that, but one of them is undoubtedly an inability to deal with masculinity, to deal with our emotions, to deal with the human condition. And just as bad or worse, we're not just damaging ourselves, but we're damaging other people. Domestic violence, domestic abuse. It's an awful problem in this country and across the Western world, in many other parts of the world as well. Men are killing themselves, men are killing women. This can't be a good thing. It can't be a natural thing. It can't be something that we tolerate in any way at all. I have both a son and a daughter. This isn't the world I want them to grow up into. It's not the future that we can just tolerate or accept. Now, there are some, again, that will say, well, I'm a good man. Hashtag not all men. You know what? Bullshit. It's slightly better than those of you who heard me a few years ago saying another swear word, which might be a little bit more offensive. But seriously, this can't be accepted either, this not all men excuse. Why do we say this? Well, obviously it's not all men. I've never physically abused a woman. I've never murdered a woman. But does that make it right for us to say that? Is that a reasonable excuse? Well, I don't think it is. I think it's something we say, or some men say, because they feel uncomfortable, because they feel they're being accused. But you know what? My discomfort shouldn't override the feeling that many, many women feel each and every day. It shouldn't take precedence over the fear that many women feel each and every day. I was walking home from work the other day, and to get from the train stop to my home, I walked through a park. I was on my own. I can't actually remember what time of day it was, but I was on my own, and there was a single woman on her own a little bit ahead of me, coming towards me. And this happens fairly frequently, And I must admit, many times I feel, how can I make myself look less intimidating, look less scary? Because I know what many of those women are feeling. I know what I feel when my daughter's staying out late at night, even when my wife is out late at night on her own. How many women in the audience have left a social engagement with friends, said, text me when you get home? We shouldn't have to live like that. Women shouldn't have to live like that. I hate feeling that other women might look at me and feel fear just because I'm a male. That's an atrocious situation. We have other problems where clearly it's not everyone that's involved, but that doesn't stop us from running public health campaigns or advertising campaigns. We don't say not all drivers when there's a speeding campaign. We don't say not all smokers. This is a big enough problem that we all need to take responsibility for. Men, women, sons, daughters, parents, colleagues. It should be hashtag all of us. Maybe we can start a new movement around that. Now, well, what about those who claim we're losing our rights? Those men's rights advocates. Guess what? Bullshit. You getting the hang of it here? Well, unless you thought your rights involved physically intimidating, physically abusing, psychologically torturing, withholding the rights of some female member of your family, you're losing nothing. It's a completely fallacious argument. You lose nothing by having our women, half the population, feel safe, feel secure, not have to worry about being attacked on the way home or in their homes. So the simple response then is just get your shit together, men. Get it together, right? Well, no. Again, as much as I'd like to say that, it doesn't work like that. I spent all of my adult life as a psychologist of some sort or other. I spent almost all of my adult life trying to help people change what they do. From a clinical psychologist, an executive coach, an organizational consultant. And we know that it doesn't work. Telling people to just stop bad things doesn't work. I'll never forget one of the most important lessons I learned when I was doing my PhD many years ago from one of the gurus in my field was a statement along the lines of information to behavior change is like spaghetti to a brick. Think about that for a minute. That's a mindfuck, isn't it? Sorry. The relationship between information to behavior change is nothing. How many of us know that we should do things but we don't? Telling a smoker to just stop is very unlikely to work. Telling someone who's overweight to just eat less, it just doesn't work. So telling a violent male or a toxic male or whatever to just stop, to just change, it doesn't work. Now that doesn't mean we shouldn't be trying to change it, but I'd like to advocate a slightly different approach. We need to focus more on positive masculinity. And this ties in very much to the appreciative inquiry approach we've heard quite a bit about this morning. We need to focus on what masculinity can be at its very best, not just what it shouldn't be. And I think the debate so far has been almost exclusively and unhelpfully to some extent focused on what we need to stop. Now that's not to say that's wrong, but how much more helpful would it be if we were to focus on what we can be, what people could start to do, what men particularly could be doing? And not just positive masculinity, but masculinities. There's no one way to be a good man. This is, I think, one of the most important messages in this area. There isn't any such thing as the right masculinity. What works for me, for example, won't necessarily work for you or your husbands or your sons, or what works for me won't be the same as what works for my son. He's a different person. Hopefully he'll find his own version of positive masculinity. There are multiple ways that we can be good men. And too often we've just focused on some idealized version that won't necessarily be right for everyone. We need to celebrate these positive men, these positive deviants, the men that deviate from the norm in a positive way. We don't see them enough. Unfortunately, the front pages of our papers are covered by the violent misogynist people, by the criminals, by the bad people. We don't see enough of the good men doing good things. We don't see enough of the great fathers, the great sons, the great brothers. If they were celebrated more, we'd have more role models that more of us could choose from, more of us could try to imitate. And we need to use other men, particularly the positive men, to help support each other. We know for a fact, we're seeing this more and more in different areas, particularly in the mental health realm, that peer-to-peer support and peer-to-peer learning is very powerful. Hearing from other men how they've discovered their positive masculinity will help other men. And this is what we need to work towards. Positive definitions of masculinities, plural, highlighted by, celebrated by, and taught by other positive men. So I'd like to finish just with this point. It's not just about being a man, it's about being your man. For you or your husband or your son. And if you can't do that, well, don't be a violent misogynist dickhead. Thank you very much.